We could call it wearing the Milo's hat, hungry, agile, and together. The H for us is being self-led, entrepreneurial. A being agile, being willing to pivot, change, move with ease. And then the T, and no pun intended, is how we do it. And that's together. One thing that is so unique about the Milo's culture is the fact that we work cross-departmentally every day. And I love that because you bring together diversity of thought. So we will have people, even on our accounting team, working on projects within the people team.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everyone, welcome to We're Only Human. Today's episode is part of a series that's sponsored by our friends over at Insperity. We worked with them last year to do some incredible research around SMV HR challenges. So if you're an organization with 1,000 or fewer employees, like you're going to hear from Ryan today in the episode, you have some unique challenges. You may have problems to solve. You can't delegate them because you're the one who you delegate to. You may have big challenges as you grow. You're not sure where to go. That's what they do over at Insperity. They help organizations that are trying to make that leap and create a long-term path for success. So you can check out more about them in the show notes in this episode. And now let's get into the conversation with Ryan and hear about how he and Milo's tea company are doing some sweet things in the world today. Hey everyone, welcome to We're Only Human. I am Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm glad you're here with us. Looking forward to a fun conversation with my basically neighbor down in Birmingham, Alabama, Ryan Faught from Milo's Tea Company. I'm so glad you're here, Ryan. Welcome.
Ben, thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to spend some time with you talking about all things people and look forward to a great conversation.
It's going to be a blast. You and I were chatting about this in our prep call. And at some point I was like, I should have just recorded this. It was so good. And so today I'm hoping the audience is going to get all those good ideas and strategies and like the one-liners. You had a couple really solid ones that I was like sharing with my friends after our prep call. They were so good. Before we get into some of the fun stuff that we'll talk about today, some of the things about the culture there and how y'all differentiate yourselves from other companies and how you take care of your people at a deep level. Would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, I have been with Milo's in January will be 8 years. I've been doing the work of people for over 18 years, and it is just a joy to be able to share all the great things that we have going on here at Milo's because I think we have something special. I know each company has a culture that they're very passionate about, and ours is really built on our values, and that being safety, responsibility, integrity. Those are being the main pillars of that. And then we also really have some hat values. It's called being hungry, agile, and together. So I tell people, you think of the Milo's house. People say that they spend more time at work than they do at home. So those core values being the foundation of the business. And then our hat values are what kind of hold us up, the pillars. So we could call it wearing the Milo's hat, hungry, agile, and together. The H for us is being self-led, entrepreneurial. A being agile, being willing to pivot, change, move with ease. And then the T, and no pun intended, is how we do it. And that's together. One thing that is so unique about the Milo's culture is the fact that we work cross-departmentally every day. And I love that because you bring together diversity of thought. So we will have people, even on our accounting team, working on projects within the people team. And that is a shared experience throughout the organization. And when you think about we're a third generation family owned company, and we're actually in the process now of educating the next gen, is the companies that stay alive are those that innovate and change and grow, but yet remain true to who they are. And so I would say what separates us, if I were just to look at 4 key words, one is trust, willingness to be vulnerable and honest. Another one is going to be vulnerability. We all have strengths. We all have opportunities, and being a high culture of feedback where we're offering just grace and truth, not blame or shame. And then what are our norms and our behaviors that we can say as a company, everyone having a seat at the table, what are our responsibilities? And then how are we going to be aligned to make sure that we are one team with one purpose and one plan? And when you do that, you create value. And we all know what happens when everybody has a why of why they're coming to work every day. And then the company has a goal and mission about what they're trying to do and accomplish. When you can connect those things through shared values, that's that connected tissue, I think, that helps both the associate and the company see wins and see opportunities that they didn't even think were possible for themselves.
I love that. I had the thought as you were sharing that. I'm enjoying hearing the culture piece and the values and all those things. And I had a thought that I should have teased this at the very beginning. For anyone who does not know Milo's the brand, it's Southern sweet tea. That's the best way to put it. Like Southern hospitality in a glass is probably not the brand that y'all go for, but it's the one that I think of. And so if anyone has ever not tried it, find a grocery store, find a place local, find a location there, give it a shot, because you will be pleasantly surprised. It is what you expect in a glass of sweet tea. It's not the other stuff that's
it isn't. So it
bag. It's good. It's plenty of sugar. There you go.
Yeah, and then we've got products for those that don't like.
I know, but I want the real experience. Come on, don't take it.
It is. It's real ingredients.
Yes.
It really is. So no additives, no preservatives. Milo's became a beverage company with the introduction of lemonade, and we are still just seeing so many headwinds going into the future. And when you think about where Milo's can show up, and we could be in every corner of the world, that is an opportunity that we see is real. So how do you do that? And it's like that Amazon working backwards where you want to be. And so what are the things that you have to do to make that dream reality?
So one of the things you and I were talking about, speaking of dreams and realities and those pieces there, is we were talking about some of the things that light you up as an HR leader. And one of the things you mentioned, and I love seeing the smile on your face when you said this, was I love seeing when someone uncovers or discovers a new talent. Talk about that and the joy that you get in that.
Yeah, I jokingly said that I'm not a people guy. What I am is someone that really loves to see company success tied with personal and professional growth. And how we do that, we can be a catalyst for change and for helping people see other opportunities maybe that they didn't see for themselves. We say at Milo's, you come here to grow. And I love that in the fact that, I might have a passion doing people, but because of the cross-departmental relationships and the opportunities that we have to work outside of our place of expertise, and then the learning programs that we have here, I might find that I can find the same joy in doing something else. And we have so many of those stories where people have started their career in sales and then have moved maybe to an operations role in the business. We recently had someone from our accounting team that joined the operations side. And so it's just great to see those moments. You'll see people in the plant that's where they started, but then their growth trajectory said that they wanted to join the corporate team. And that's what I love, is that there's no constraints based on what your experience or skills and capabilities are, because as long as people are values aligned and they have a teachable spirit, then we can help get them there. But that's part of that being hungry, that self-led journey. If you have to have an owner's mindset. But with that, you can come in and just achieve things that you didn't even think that you might end up doing that for the rest of your career. And that's what I love about what we do here, is it's not just a job. A job is something you go to every day. You punch the clock and you go home. A career is something that you can say, hey, I'm in this for either a reason or season, a lifetime, and a career is a lifetime. And so what can I do to invest in myself? And what can the company do? We have a responsibility to help people get there. And so it is a great thing when you can see that unlock. And I think I shared with you, I've visually seen that in someone. And when you can see that spark, and that from that point forward, something different has happened, and that they see where they are in the company in a different space. It's just that value creation and that opportunity is, you can't put words on it.
I'm thinking of a silly example, but it ties in with the idea that you're sharing there. We were in Atlanta a few years ago for a weekend thing. I said, hey, there's a 5K. Would you watch the kids while I go run it? I'm like, yeah, sure. And at the end of the day, she ended up coming home with a medal, not from the 5K, but watermelon seed spitting contest that happened after it. Like one of the kids wanted to try, but was scared. So she said, Mom, would you do it with me? My wife ended up winning this contest, apparently a hidden secret skill she didn't know about until she was put in the right situation. And that's what you're talking about here. When we give people these chances, these opportunities to flex into other roles, to work with other teams, to interact with others, they see where those opportunities are. And we're doing the silo thing. We miss the chance to see what other opportunities are there or even take advantage of those. And so that's one of the things that sounds like y'all are doing fundamentally at the fabric of how you work together. That's different from some organizations because it gives people that visibility that they can raise their hand and say, hey, can I get that a try?
Ben, what I've found out is if we don't present those opportunities, someone else is, right? And so
outside the business, right?
Absolutely. So how can we show people that our pillars on the people team stay the same, but the strategies change? We like to plan at least 3 to 5 years out, is to attract, grow, belong, and retain. And that retention piece, that glue, is what we want to have here at Milo's. And I think that's part of allowing people to try and experience things outside of what they would traditionally maybe gravitate towards. I know I shared with you, we do have a healthy group of individuals, as each company should have, that want to grow in place. We need to support them as well. Maybe you find joy every day. They're running a piece of machinery on our plant, or maybe you're in our IT team and you love supporting some of the products that you are. Like, how do we continue to invest in you? And that there is that push and pull that we want to help you continue to grow in the skills for the job that you're in now. And let's help you continue with that passion that you have. Not everyone desires to move up to another level, but I think support, acknowledgement, and just really asking people, what is it you want to do? I found that if you tell people what you want them to do, that sometimes that causes them to go in a very different direction. And sometimes they'll say yes to something that they know they really aren't passionate about. And we've all had those experiences where we've put leaders in a role and then that's not where they thrive. They're more of an individual contributor. And we all know the pain that's involved with that.
Yes. One of the early podcast interviews I did years ago, because it's hard to believe the podcast has been going for almost 8 years now, but I talked to Dr. Linda Reese and we talked about the myth of fit, which is the book she wrote, where so many times we put a leader in a role. Oh, it didn't work out. They just didn't fit. You're like, did we actually ask them if they wanted this role? Do we prepare them for this role? Do we give them the resources around them? Because they need extra support when they first start, not less support, good luck, but more support to get them launched off. And she said there's this myth around they just didn't fit in that role. And I'm glad you called that one out. Do you mind if I go back? I want to ask about a term you used a moment ago I thought was interesting. I have not heard someone talk about this before. You mentioned a teachable spirit. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? What are you looking for in someone when they have that teachable spirit? Is it something outward, like some behavioral piece? Is it something around their mentality, around work? What sort of things should other leaders be thinking about if they're like, oh, that's an interesting concept. I want to follow your lead on that.
One of the first things I think that you have to do is meet associates where they are. What is your learning style? What brings you excitement? Learning something new or challenging yourself. Give me some examples of those experiences you've had in life. I think that helps you deduce a little bit about their curiosity. And curiosity is going to be that driver of change and willingness to experience something new. We talked about people that grow in place. So they want to continue to do what they're doing and can do that. People, I think, with a teachable spirit they have that hunger to do more. They also show that through adversity, they continue to thrive and seek ways of continuous improvement within themselves. I also think that it is some of the behavioral things like the outward expressions of acceptance, of understanding, but also just being open and willing to change. I think the people that don't have that teachable spirit, it doesn't mean that they're on the wrong bus. It just means that they're in a different seat on the bus. And to bring this around a little bit, you talked about fit just a second ago. And when you think about the teaching and the growth that goes with fit, is making sure that the fit, when you're talking about that, is not for the job of today. I think that's where a lot of people are going to get it wrong in years to come. And you think about companies that were high growth at one time, but now they're not experiencing that, is because they've hired for those roles of what they were today. We have to hire when we're bringing people in and think about, can they do the job as it's going to change 2 to 3 to 5 years from now? Because it's going to. That's how the world works. And so do they have that willingness to want to do that? Do they have that capability? Because if a company's growing, 10xing itself, then individuals have to 10x themselves along the way. And so that's one thing we're really challenging all of our leaders and even our talent acquisition team, is not just looking at where we are, but where we're going with each role.
We're making so many notes as you're sharing, Ryan. I'm writing down things like the hunger, right? You mentioned being willing to face adversity. So I labeled that courage, the acceptance piece, the openness to change, all of those things wrapped together. And I love that you said, hey, listen, every person will not have this mindset, right? It's probably impossible that everyone's going to feel that same way about some of the things you're doing at work, whether it's the season they're in life. If you've got a bunch of little kids running around, maybe it's just they're here, they're putting in their time, they're doing their best work they can. And there'll be another time where they want to be open to something else, a different kind of challenge. But right now, they got enough challenges as it is. But for those people that are leaning in saying, what else is there for me here? What else can I do? I want to contribute more. Having that sort of attitude, that real teachable spirit. I love that you elaborate on that, because I think that's a great set of habits, a great set of behaviors, a great set of traits to look for in people that we're trying to bring up. Don't just grab someone who's good at whatever functional role they're in, whatever job they're doing, but that has that spirit of, I want to do more, I want to contribute more, but also I know I don't know everything. And help me know those things.
And when I think about people with teachable spirit, you ask for some key capabilities, I think, in self-motivating, I think is a big indicator of someone that has that trait and ability. Being self-aware, they know self. They know what they're good at. They know what their opportunities are. They're self-disciplined. They're self-improving, constantly looking for that gift of feedback. And feedback is something that at Milo's, we've really turned up the dial with. And it goes back to helping people understand what feedback is. And for us, we continue to champion that it's a force for good. It takes a lot of courage for someone to be willing to share how they're feeling about something with another person. And to the receiver, they are the ones that get to decide what they do with that, right? They can take that feedback, they can look and seek for ways to maybe do things differently, adjust their ways of working, self-direct themselves, or they can choose to ignore that. But I think feedback is a strong muscle of a company that can really work as a cohesive team, because you've got to be willing to hear what you don't need to hear or what you actually do need to hear, and then to act upon it. And that spirit of accountability is what I love about Milo's, is it's just some of that just authentic leadership. And I tell our leaders all the time, leaders of people, you can't be a coach and a player. You've got to be able to know the plays in the game to be able to coach, but you've really got to make sure that you are developing those that do have that teachable spirit, right? That's where we need to spend our time. Those are the change makers. Those are the innovators. And so how can we create avenues where we identify those skills, capabilities, behaviors early on so that we can make that investment and they can see that over time?
Let me ask you this, because this is this sort of continues this leadership thread and some of the pieces you're talking about here. One of the things that I heard you say is that we need leaders who are developing their people, coaching their people, supporting their people, because they know that's part of their role, not just things they're doing in addition to their role. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? You're the player coach sort of metaphor there. But so often leaders are mostly evaluated based on how they're doing with their stuff in addition to that other stuff. So is there a way or just something that you do at Milo's that helps them to reposition that and see that as the core focal point? You're an amplifier of people, not just a manager of people. Is there something that y'all do differently in the selection process or in how you're enabling them? I'm just curious how you're helping to transition that, because I think that's a different perspective than a lot of companies have.
Absolutely. We all aren't great at everything. But what we did do a couple of years ago was, everybody needs to do a culture check, pulse, and really make sure that they are inspecting what they expect. And when it comes to leaders of people, the job is so much more than just what the function team, what their output is, and what success looks like. But we developed 8 pillars of authentic leadership. And here's what we did. First and foremost, we educated the business, all associates. This is how we are all going to act and behave as leaders of people. And this is how we're going to review on that. So the performance review at Milo's is not your typical metrics driven, what are the outcomes? But for leaders, it is built off these 8 pillars, and it's being genuine and humble, being self-aware, respecting people, purposeful and strategic, transparent and open, trustworthy and approachable. And so when you think about that, and in the center being authentic leadership like a flywheel, all of those things have to happen. You won't have that culture of feedback if you do not have the authentic leadership pillars working in tandem with one another. And so what we expect on that is through a healthy cadence of bi-weekly one-on-ones. There is a section in each person's one-on-one that we talk about how their leadership qualities are growing and how they're working with the business. That performance review is another time where associates, the leader themselves and their leader, get to share open feedback about what those opportunities are. So we can't just say we're going to evaluate and inspect and then not have anything to support those programs. So we have over 8 different learning programs. And one of those is a Leaders as Coaches program that really has just transformed this business. And it is leaders throughout the company. There's a monthly cadence of where they meet together. They work through topics. It's an open time for them to have moments where they can share thoughts, open up opportunities of feedback loop. And then there's some homework that goes with that, because as leaders, we have to continue to work on that. You have to win with people every day. And then as a leader, you have to know the score. You have to know how you're driving as a coach and the effectiveness of what the team puts forth and their KPIs and their numbers and how the company's performance is all connected to this thought of just great leaders in place every day. Everyone adding value.
I really appreciate the deep dive there into that, because I think there are so many, when I talk about challenges around retention all the time, leaders come up, managers come up as a blocker or enabler of that, depending on how you want to look at it, because they can be both. And universally, no matter where I am, whether I'm here in the States, whether I'm somewhere on a global stage, whether I'm in a small group or a large audience, that conversation around managers always comes with we just got to put up with it. And I think the approach that I might hear, everything we're doing, every opportunity we have to position them appropriately, to give them the resources they need, to make sure they understand what good looks like, putting those things out so they don't have to guess, they don't have to wonder. We don't have to assume that they have a good manager who's modeling that for them, but everyone is seeing the same script, the same playbook. We all know what the plays are we're going to call as leaders. Like those sorts of things are so critical for enabling that success at every single level of leadership in the organization. And yeah, so many companies are like, let's look at our frontline managers. Or and I'm like, man, we're missing the chance here. We're missing the chance to really be great as an organization and to really enable every one of our people to elevate their performance ultimately.
Yeah. And I would say also missing the opportunity for strong peer mentorship and connections for all leaders across. And that's what this Leaders as Coaches program does. is it brings anyone that manages people together in these different work groups, and the work groups challenge again one another. There's a level of peer accountability in that room. And executives, we don't go to those meetings. It is really just for leaders to work together to grow and scale self. And our learning team facilitates that. And again, it is part of the secret sauce for how you can get things done. And I think that when everyone's working on the same things and on the same behaviors, norms, and opportunities as leaders, then the whole company knows what the expectation is.
I don't know why that sounds like rocket science. I don't know why it does. But it does, because it just doesn't happen that often. It's one of those.
We make it so hard. I think that companies,
it's difficult to do, but it's pretty straightforward when you stop and think about it.
If companies don't value growing and scaling leaders, then I think that they're really going to have to look themselves in the mirror 3 to 5 years down the road and see where they are. And that's what our teams expect. They expect high accountability with themselves and with the people that are helping shepherd their growth and development, and being that person of trust that they can bring ideas of how we can improve, continuous improvement. It really sparks the ability for people to all be innovators within the organization. And I think that when you trust and leaders are trusted, then people are going to produce remarkable work.
Go for it.
One of the biggest things that I've learned in my career, and sometimes you learn the biggest lessons the hard way, is that you can go fast with a lot of things, especially high growth companies, being numbers driven, fiscally sound. How do we move on to the next thing, and how do we keep the wheels turning? But I learned very quickly that you have to go slow with people, because when you go slow with people, you take the time to step back and you're more thoughtful. And when you're more thoughtful, you show people that you care. And there is so much power in the care that someone else feels like that they have for you. It can take that person, again, their trajectory of where they thought they were, and send them into the stratosphere. It helps those turnaround stories become more and more prevalent in your own organization. It is the driver for the high pose and for your next level leaders. And so I think every leader has to have that value of genuine care and concern for the people that they're responsible for.
That's one of the areas in the research I've not talked about very much over the last few years. But when we look at what does flexibility mean to the average worker, we think about things like when I work, where I work, shift scheduling, especially for teams like y'all have working on the floor, things like that. But one of the things that the workforce tells us that flexibility means to them is being able to raise my hand, as you were saying, and bring ideas, bring suggestions, not just problems always. We assume it's always a negative when they raise their hand, but sometimes it's, hey, you know what? We're doing it this way. If we did it this way, wouldn't it be more efficient? Wouldn't it save us time? Wouldn't it save us money? And oftentimes, again, there are cultures there that don't embrace that don't appreciate that. It's be quiet and get back to work. And we're missing a chance to get the most out of people when they're giving us the best ideas they have. There are organizations who don't have the culture or the mechanisms to appreciate that and accept that and at least process it. Because sometimes it's not a good idea, but sometimes like, holy moly, that's incredible. Yes, we should have done that yesterday. Let's get started. I'm glad you talked about that piece of the feedback and having that sort of back and forth, because that's one of the things we miss sometimes when we always assume that, okay, we're doing a survey of employees. It's going to come back with all the things that are negative and all the bad things.
Speaking of surveys, we do a quarterly engagement survey. It's the ENPS, I'm sure, the Net Promoter Score, and it is anonymous, and that presents opportunities to get real feedback and then challenges, and the fact that, yeah, the follow-up is a little difficult and it is scored, but more importantly, it is an opportunity for all associates to be heard. And some of you mentioned just how people have been able to be a part of continuous improvement and ideas that we can maybe implement in the organization. We've had so many of those come through that survey. We've been able to change things within our business to help our ways of working improve. We've enhanced benefits through that. We've had great ideas about product innovation that people have felt comfortable just sharing. And so it's really been great to see how most people look at an engagement survey just as a barometer of how people feel about the company. But for us, you got to go deeper than that in order for people to have trust in being heard. And we can't change everything, but it is an opportunity to first and foremost celebrate what you're doing. I look at it like a stop, start, and continue each quarter. And we share all of that information raw. Each leader will go through the comments, and there's no shame in how people feel. The shame would be if we didn't listen.
Yeah, you used some words earlier. You said we were really thinking about how to operate in a spirit of grace and truth, not a spirit of blame or shame. I wrote that one down because I thought that was really compelling as we're trying to figure out they're going to tell us some things we don't do. And one of the ways, someone the other day was, I was working with a client on a project, like, hey, give us your brutal feedback on this. I said, I don't have much brutality in me, honestly. I don't think of myself that way, but I said, I can speak the truth in love. I'll tell you what I see, but I'm going to do it in a way that's helpful and supportive, and it's going to help you get to whatever the next thing needs to be in a positive way. Okay, we can take that. I think that's what you're talking about here is take that in. Sometimes it won't be pretty, but we have to address it. Or as you said, the shame would be if we ignore it, we don't ask, or we don't actually try to at least make that acknowledgement there because we're missing an opportunity to tell people we care about them.
Absolutely. And there's so many great turnaround stories at Milo's where we did stop to share, and where I think in other organizations, they probably would have been told we can no longer work together. But that what you're talking about is the humanity part in what we do. And our CEO often says, no one wants to walk around with lettuce in their teeth. No one wants to wait a year at that annual performance review to find out what they've been doing. They want to hear that. Again, that's that continuous feedback. And they certainly don't want to wait till that point in time to find out where they've disappointed someone or not met expectations. I just really would love to stress that leaders have to have relationships with their people. They have to invite themselves into those spaces where they can spend time learning what drives that individual. A lot of times, I think leaders look at their whole team, and that's great. You do need to have that lens, but you also have to know what drives each individual's behavior, drives great performance, what drives them not to be their best self, and then find ways where you can utilize those other resources that other people have that can fill in those gaps.
That's a great reminder in a lot of areas of life. I'm thinking, I talk about the kids as a whole, but if you got to stop and make sure you break out and talk to each of them because each have different strengths, different weaknesses, different challenges, different things that light them up, things that shut them down. And the people we work with are the exact same way. And leaders, if they do not know those things about someone, the data actually show that there's statistically like a 0% chance of that person saying they feel supported by that manager if they don't know some of those kinds of things like you're talking about there that really make them tick. They've got to get beyond their pay rate, their job title, their job tasks. They've got to get into those things that make the person who they are. Because once you see that about someone, you treat them differently and they feel that. It's hard to quantify, but they feel that. And it sounds like part of what y'all are trying to create at Milo. This is so incredible. Okay. You have shared so many great one-liners, points, takeaways, ideas in this conversation. Some of the things that y'all are doing uniquely that make y'all so different. And I really enjoyed this. If I'm going to give you one last moment, you've got 30 seconds here on the stage or a minute here on the stage to tell any of our friends out there in HR, this is the thing that we've got to do. If we do nothing else, we've got to do this. If we're going to be successful, we're going to enable some of the results like you talked about today, that value creation. What would you leave our audience with here as a takeaway?
I would say celebrate wins. Don't go straight to opportunities. Value the team above self. Know who your team is. And with that meaning, my team is the executive team. I lead the people team, but knowing where your accountability is within the organization, always be humble. Don't let ego drive your behavior. Let your actions be consistent with the values of your organization. Make sure that values are living in your organization. We use values through our talent acquisition process, through our growth process, when we're looking at succession planning and internal promotions and where people can be. And sometimes you have to be honest that someone's not values aligned. And when that happens, then you probably need to ask if that person can be successful within the business. Don't shy away from healthy conflict. Let that be something that is a key driver of belonging within an organization, not something that is divisive. And then finally, I would just say have a thirst for excellence. Never feel like you've won with people, with culture, with any initiatives that you have now or for the future. Always have that spirit of continuous improvement, and you have to win. I've said this previously, but I truly believe it with all my heart. You have to win every day with people, and we do tough work. But the thing is, we do great work when we do it together and not just with our own function team, but when we reach out, we understand different business needs of others working in various places in the organization. When you do that together, you create experiences and you create moments that matter. And just don't give up. A lot of times companies will get ecstatic and get stale with that our culture's good and we know that everybody knows our values. Don't ever assume that. Always seek ways to elevate your values in the organization and take time to share those with your people any and every time that you can. And I think when you do that, your priorities of work, you will achieve the success with that because you're all aligned towards one common goal.
Again, 40 takeaways for me. My biggest one there in that bit, Ryan, was knowing your values isn't the same thing as living your values, and make sure that's got to be there. That's got to be part of how you do this every single day. So many good takeaways here. If someone wants to connect with you, wants to know more about you, just kind of follow your journey as well, as LinkedIn okay for them to do that?
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or connect in any other social platform that you might find me on. But I'm always willing to learn and continuous improvement. I cannot talk about it, not seek it for myself. I would definitely be open to connecting with people and sharing our story here at Milo's. And I just appreciate the time, Ben, today. I've enjoyed speaking with you. Hopefully have been able to share just a few nuggets of what I've found to be successful throughout my career journey. And then, of course, seeing it living here at Milo's has brought a lot of things full circle for me.
Anybody that listens to you for more than a minute, Ryan, can hear the passion in your voice for the work you do at Milo's, but also just for being a person that cares about people and helps drive the business and the value there through the people. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Again, my list of notes is, oh goodness, I got homework for myself to go and organize these and pull my takeaways out of this. But thank you again for spending the time with us. It's been incredibly valuable for me. I know for the audience as well. For all of you out there, I hope you got some good takeaways today. Today's conversation reminded me a little bit of our previous conversation with Jeremy Stickling over at Newspawn Transportation. I'll drop that in the chat because they have some similar alignment on the principles, caring about people and so on, but a different organization, different culture, different approach and type of industry. So some fun parallels in those. I'll drop that in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, you'll like that one as well. Thank you again, Ryan, and to all of you out there. We'll catch you again next time on We're Only Human.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.